Hey Grace Church, my name is Josh. Welcome to the weekly for the week of November 12th. Today we are talking about the Apostle Paul's first sermon. In 2002, in a small church in Zambia, a young pastor named Pastor Chandwe felt strongly that his church should serve the widows and the orphans of their community. So one Sunday he brought the widows and orphans of the church before the people, and he read James 1:27 that says, "Pure and genuine religion in the sight of God the Father means caring for the widows and the orphans in their distress and refusing to let the world corrupt you." And as he launched what was now known as the first ever Orphan Sunday, there was an American missionary in the crowd who then brought this idea back to America. And so for over 20 years now, the second Sunday in November, many churches have participated in what's now known as Pure Religion Sunday. And it's a Sunday that allows churches to come alongside exactly what James 1 tells us to do, serving those in our city who need help, whether they are orphaned or they're in the foster care program or wherever they find themselves in the distress of their lives. Churches can serve them. And so we highlighted Olive Crest. We told some stories about how they're doing it, how house churches in our church are participating. And this tied perfectly into Acts chapter 13 and the Apostle Paul's teaching. So in Acts 13, Paul and Barnabas are in a place called Pisidian Antioch, and they go and they start sharing the gospel. And so the remainder of the New Testament, it starts to talk about the gospel as Paul's gospel, like he owns it. It belongs to him. And so when we see in Acts 13, the first sermon, what he does is what Jesus did. In the road to Emmaus, Jesus is walking with these guys after his resurrection. And it says, starting with Moses, he explained to them all of the scriptures concerning himself. And we see the same thing happening here. Later in 1 Corinthians 15, Paul says the same thing that Jesus says. He says, "For what I received, I passed on to you as first importance, that Christ died according to the scriptures, and he was buried, and he was raised from the dead on the third day according to the scriptures." So what we see in Acts 13 is Paul talking about the reliability of the Bible in the Old Testament to reference the reliability of Jesus being the fulfillment of all that's been done through Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, onto King David, onto John the Baptist. He's connecting all these pieces, and then he puts forward this idea that the gospel was a plan. It was done according to the plan, according to the scriptures. And then the gospel was an event in human history, that Jesus showed up into human history as fulfillment of God's sovereign plan. And so Christ has shown up in the world. He's lived a perfect life, died a substitutionary death, rose victoriously over the grave. And the Apostle Paul starts appealing to the Israelites, saying that Jesus' body did not see decay. And this is his way of saying the resurrection allowed Christ to be the firstborn among all of the people that would follow after him in belief. And so he starts to then talk about this transfer between what the law could not do and what Jesus could do. And so I want to read to you verse 28 and 29. So this is what we highlighted in Acts 13, verse 38 and 39. The Apostle Paul says, "Therefore, my friends, I want you to know that through Jesus, the forgiveness of sins is proclaimed to you. Through him, everyone who believes is set free from every sin, a justification you were not able to obtain under the law of Moses." And here's what Paul is saying, that the law of Moses could not offer you the spirit of sonship. It could not offer you adoption. It could not offer you freedom from the penalty of sin and the weight of sin. And now you have something different. And in Galatians 4 tells us this. We are now sons. God has sent the spirit of his son into our heart, crying, "Abba, Father." So you are no longer a slave. It's exactly what we talked about in Acts 13. You are no longer a slave, but a son. And if a son, then you are an heir through God. And so this is the beauty of the connection between what this Sunday is with Pure Religion Sunday and Paul's first sermon, teaching us that in Christ we have been adopted into the family. That adoption was costly. That adoption required the right qualifications for God to do that in our place. But in the crescendo of the message, adoption transfers us from being children of wrath to children of God. And that's Paul's gospel. Paul's gospel to the Israelites and to the Gentiles was the same, that you and me were by nature objects of wrath. We were in the dominion of darkness, but we've been transferred into the dominion of light. We've been transferred into the family of God, and that moves us both spiritually. We are now set free, and physically, we are now the kind of people that want to serve those who are in distress. So Grace Church, my hope for this weekend is that we believed again the gospel, and we saw vertically that we have been adopted in Christ, and now horizontally we live in the world as those who are serving and capable of being there for those in distress. And so my hope is that we can be this kind of people and live the beauty of being set free in the gospel.